Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Communications Masterclass. I am glad you are watching the replay. We have Vicky and Nisha so far today. Vicky is having technical trouble. Whoops. And now she can't just not talk. She's gone. That's okay, Nisha. It's you and me, girl. Our communication topic today is speaking like a leader. And I am talking about communications not by being super polished or by having charisma or a great performance. I'm talking about communication as leadership. So, the first question that I have for you is think about one of the great leaders in your life, whether it was a supervisor or a teacher or someone in your personal life, and tell me what made them special.
So it was actually a manager I had at a
Mhm.
retail store,
Mhm.
and he was always solution focused. Even when things didn't go out right, instead of pointing out this is wrong, he'll acknowledge, well, we didn't meet our goals here, but how can we work together to be more effective and efficient? And that always stood out to me as far as like how I work do things for myself and work with a team.
That's excellent. That's a good manager.
Hmm.
Well, and I too, and it's interesting you should say it that way because the best manager I ever had was the same way. They were very communicative. They they didn't accuse people of things. They were solution oriented. They wanted to talk about what happened and what together we were going to do to fix it. And so those two managers that we're talking about are great communicators. Now, the thing with communication is that, or with leadership, is that it's not what you know, it's not just what you know, it's how you communicate what you know. Because you can be the smartest leader in the world, but if you can't share that knowledge with people, it's not going to help. If you can't clearly address what's going on, that's not going to help. So, you need to be able to make sure that people understand you, and even more importantly, what people trust after you talk. So clarity is essential. Now, I know clarity is a word you hear from me all the time. It's annoying, but that's the bottom line with communication. When you speak, do people understand what you're communicating? And I'm not talking about an accent or anything like that. I'm talking about if you say the sky is blue, do they understand the sky is blue? It's not gray or green or any other color, it is blue. As a leader, I want you to know that we're talking about leadership today, mostly from an employment standpoint, but also leaders in the community, leaders on boards and organizations, nonprofit organizations, and leadership at home, because all of those are true leadership positions. And the other thing is, you don't have to have a title to be a leader, but you can be a leader with any title that you have. Even if that title is mom, it's still a leadership role. And you don't just communicate leadership to people, you model leadership to people. And that is imperative. Now, I want to start with a statistic that I shared with you last week, and that's going to set the stage for the workplace today. It's the statistic that Gallup shared that only 20% of workers show up engaged. So that means that the other 80% are not fully energized, they're not fully invested, they're not fully connected to the things that they're doing. And that's a bad thing. Not only because if you're being paid, you should be working at 100%. It's a situation where you've got, and I don't remember who did this research, but 53% of leadership and managers, specifically managers, say that their employees need to be doing more work. 80% of employees and managers say they are maxed out. They can't possibly do any more work. They are just flooded. So you've got a situation where you're dealing in a work environment where 80% of the people are not fully invested, they're not there. In addition to that, they're already working at half capacity, and the phones are ringing, emails are coming in, people are walking into their office talking about them. The boss says yada yada yada, and they're overwhelmed, and the last thing they need is anyone, let alone their boss, coming in and wanting to talk to them. But the problem with that is that when leadership communication is weak, then work slows down. When the communication is vague, now you've got a trust issue. Well, what do they really mean by that? And your brain starts going in all these directions and when your brain starts moving like that to fill in the blanks, it never fills the blanks in with good stuff. It always fills it in with the bad stuff. So vague communication affects trust. And inconsistent communication from leaders, that impacts credibility. So it is imperative that leaders really step up and communicate as their best selves. Now, I think I may have shared this statistic with you last week. The Edelman Trust Barometer for last year, 7 out of 10 people surveyed say that government leaders, business leaders, and journalists are either directly saying something that's false to them, outright lying to them, or grossly exaggerating. So you've got a population of people who are skeptical. They're skeptical of any communication that they have. And so this is a problem. You need to make sure that you are credible in what you say, that people trust you and they want to listen to you. Now, clarity, as I've said before, is imperative. You've heard me mention before that in good communication, there are 4 steps. You go right to your point. You don't work your way around it. You go right to your point. You give an exclamation in 2 or 3 sentences. You give an example, and then you stop talking. 4 steps. When you're a leader, those steps are a little bit different, because what you do is you present the issue, you present your recommendation, you tell them why, you tell them what's the next step, and then you stop talking. Now that's good leadership communication, not only because it's concise and it takes less time, but it affects how people perceive you. And it demonstrates structure in your communication. Because ultimately, when a leader speaks clearly, people feel safer. And when they feel safer, they're more inclined to stand up and talk. And if they stand up and talk, then problems are determined faster, and therefore production can improve. So communications is not just some soft skill that people talk about. When you ask them, well, what's communications? It's always a soft skill. In business, it's not. It is an operational tool that makes a complete difference in how things go. The other thing that leaders do is that they talk in decisions. They don't talk in vague language. We've all heard those people talk to us where they say, well, I was thinking that maybe we could think about trying something different. Well, that's pretty vague, and that's pretty non-committal. A true leader is going to say, we need to change our operating system, and here are my 2 recommendations to do that. That's quick, it's efficient, it's concise, it's not aggressive, it's not ego-driven. It is taking ownership. And that's what it's really about. Being a leader takes ownership and communicates like an owner with clarity and conciseness. Hello, Miss Dee Dee. I am so very happy you are here today. Um,
Thank you.
there you are.
Yeah, there I am. Uh, I'm glad to see you all. And can someone fill me in, please? Because I'm
Sure,
late.
no worries. We are talking about leadership communication, that leadership is not just in a workplace, it is in any group of people, it is in the community, it is on a board, it is in your family. There's a leader in every single communication you have. And that can either be I'm speaking, so I'm the leader while you listen, but then you start speaking, so you're the leader. So it can be back and forth like that. Or it can be a situation where um, the bottom line is anytime you're speaking, you should be leading. And we talked about the importance of clarity and conciseness in communications because the statistic I mentioned last week, where only 20% of workers worldwide are engaged in work, the other 80% are showing up without all their energy, without all their commitment, without all their engagement to work. So it's imperative that the leader stands up and really gets their attention and communicates with clarity and conciseness because that is how people are going to um, want to listen to you. There's one more statistic that I want to share that I thought was really important, and that was let me get the name of it, Edelman's Trust Barometer from last year. And I do believe I mentioned this last week, but 7 out of 10 people believe that government leaders, business leaders, and journalists lie to them, that they don't tell them the truth or they grossly exaggerate the facts that they have. So a leader is already walking into a situation where the listener is skeptical, is not believing anything he or she says. So that's even more reason for the leader to be concise and clear the first time, because concise and clear usually equals trust and credibility. And that is what not only do you want to have as a leader, but that's what's going to make production, work, any process more efficient, any direction more efficient. And now you're caught up. So, we also talked about the fact that most communication, I always say, is you get to the point first, you explain it in 2 or 3 sentences, you give an example, and then you stop talking. Leader is a little bit different. Leadership is you discuss the issue, you give them your recommendation, you tell them why, you tell them what the next steps are, and you tell them, then you stop talking. So, issue, recommendation, why, what's next, stop talking. Ultimately, it is a leader's responsibility to make the people around them feel safe. Because if they feel safe, then they'll talk, they'll communicate, they'll discuss things that are out there. They're more motivated to share ideas because they don't feel like they're going to be slapped down if there's a problem. So you need to you need to have that trust and credibility when you speak, because ultimately, not only does it affect the effectiveness of your production, but it affects morale, it affects motivation, it affects retention. And those are all really big deals. So a leader's words are not small. They are they affect energy and trust and efficiency. So it's really important that the leader act like a leader and communicate like a leader. Another thing that a leader does is they create structure. Now, we've all heard, oh, she's got executive presence, or he knows how to command a room, or she's got the personality to do this. The truth is, it's not all about those things. Communication is a huge factor in executive presence, in commanding a room. It's not about personality. So, what you need to do is create a message through structure that people can follow. You don't want them to have to use their brain power to translate what you're saying. Number one, because they're going to quit translating pretty quickly and check out. And number two, because while they're translating, they're probably going to translate it wrong. And that's not something that you want. And as I mentioned earlier, if you don't fill in all the blanks for them, they're going to fill the blanks in for you. And they never fill it in with positive stuff. They always fill it in with fear and negative stuff. So that's why it is so important when leaders speak, they need to speak with structure and very decisively. There are 3 reasons in this matter. There are 2 risks. Let me give you the short version of this. This is the decision we need to make today. So when people hear those things, they know what's next. They know that there are 3 reasons. So they wait for 3 reasons. That there are 2 risks. They wait for 2 risks. That you're going to simplify it for them so that you're not going to over-explain. You're not going to babble at them. You're not going to ramble. You're going to give them a concise assessment of what's going on. And this is the decision we are going to make today. We're not leaving this room or this phone conversation until that's done. And then we'll talk about what the next steps are. I know I sound kind of like a hard ass, but I promise when I was a leader, I was much nicer. Yes, Dee Dee.
I think I might have misunderstood something. You said there are 3 reasons, and I wasn't sure if you were talking about the 3 reasons as part of the example, or whether you were saying there were 3 reasons you wanted to do this.
No, I appreciate the clarity. That was my mistake in the way I stated it. There are 3 reasons was one of the examples that I passed on. One of the things that people know. Another thing that leaders do is they slow down. As hectic and stressed and skeptical as your team is, the leaders have those same things. They are not exempt from what government leaders or business leaders or journalists throw at them. They're not exempt from being stressed and having a very chaotic workday. So it's easy to get wrapped up and mirror the chaos that you are feeling when you talk to your employees. That does not help them. The employees need to know that you are in control. Because if you're speaking fast, you are creating a sense of nervousness. You're letting people know that you're not confident. And you need to convey to them that you are in control, you've got the structure, and you're going to lead them through this. The other thing you'll find is that sometimes leaders want to over-explain and show you how smart they are. And sometimes because they've achieved a certain level, they feel like they like to hear themselves talk. That is not productive. So you need to be in control of your speed. and you need to be in control of what you say. You can accomplish that by don't use the big words in the dictionary. I mean, if that's what the context requires, obviously you do it. And I'm not saying you dumb things down. You do not treat your team with disrespect by dumbing it down. But you simplify it. That statement I made about here's the short version. That's not being condescending. That's saying I don't want to give to you all of the huge story is going to waste your time. So let me tell you what's important. So leaders also slow down and simplify. Now, one of the statistics that I shared that I think is important, Dee Dee, is that 53% of managers that were surveyed said that they need their employees to do more work. And that makes perfect sense because if 80% of your workforce is not engaged, they're not showing up, they're not energetic, they're not really invested in what they're doing, they're not taking ownership, then I'm sure that they do need more work coming out of their team. However, 80% of the employees and managers that they surveyed said that they can't do any more work. They are maxed out. And even the managers are saying that. So you're really talking about an environment that is complicated. And that's why it's important to be clear, have structure, slow down. Another thing that's really important for leaders is to give meaningful feedback. That is really critical. A lot of leaders feel like feedback is criticism, which means they either do it, but they do it from criticizing, in a criticizing standpoint, or they don't do it because the only way they know to do feedback is criticize. And if that's the only way, then they soften it. Well, if you're softening it, you're wasting my time. If you're criticizing me, you're wasting my time. What a good leader needs to do is to share here's what matters, here's what's missing, here's what you're doing great at, and here's what together we can improve. And you want to do that without crushing their confidence, and you want to do that without wasting their time. Because a leader needs to give people direction, meaning, and momentum. Yes, Dee Dee.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to write and ask a question, well, or make a statement and ask a question. I hear you. I hear you talking in several different spaces about uh, here's what matters, here's what's missing, here's what you need. But I mean, I've also heard you say the environment, be clear, and have structure. And the thing I have really learned today since 5 o'clock this morning is that I think one of the biggest things missing in business or any communication leadership role is structure. We are so sloppy with structure that companies and teams can't. They don't have a clear idea of the processes need to bring about the work.
Exactly.
And I think that is also part of that very important things that you as a leader need to know your structures that you're using. That's made abundantly clear the more I work with AI. I didn't know so many people were flying by the seat of their pants.
It's true. It's true. And that all comes down from leadership. Because if you haven't explained clearly to me what the process is, what the expectation is, then and communicate to me whether I'm doing a good job or I need to improve something without crushing my spirit. You need to be structured in what you do, because when you're structured, you're also consistent. And that's hugely important, because if you're consistent, number one, things run much more smoothly. But number two, you are demonstrating credibility. So in a time where people are feeling overwhelmed, structure makes things more efficient. And so that can help them in their overwhelm. Thank you for bringing that up. That's very true. The sixth thing that leaders do is they build trust by telling the truth cleanly. Now, that is something I should not have to say. That should be obvious. But I think we've all experienced that far too many people lie, or they lie by omission, or they tell a half truth, or perhaps they grossly exaggerate something. So they've left you with a different impression. People are skeptical, and they are skeptical from their leaders. As I mentioned with the statistic, government leaders, business leaders, journalists, they are skeptical of those groups of people. Those groups of people are leaders. So when you're a leader, they are skeptical of you, because leaders don't always tell the truth. The important piece of that puzzle is that you need discernment in what you say and when you say it, but you never mislead. There are times as a leader, especially if a company is going through trouble, where there are pending layoffs. There are pending budget cuts. There might be a merger, which could be a very good thing or not, but it can't be discussed yet because of regulations or whatever. Sometimes those things you can't just call your group together and say, okay, so here's the deal. I just get out of my boss's office and I have to lay off 5 of you. We can discuss it that way. However, if there are rumors of layoffs, you need to take the reins and call them in and say, you've probably heard rumors of layoffs, and I have to tell you, this is true. I don't have all of the details yet. I haven't evaluated our team yet, but I want you to know that it's true, but I'm doing everything I can to make this as painless for all of us in this process. And the next time that I'm going to have an answer is next Tuesday, so they know what to expect. So you need to be clear on that. You need to use simple language with that. You don't want to try to confuse them with anything. It needs to be clear enough to understand, direct enough to act on, and honest enough to believe. So that's important. Another way, and we are all guilty of this, another way that leaders communicate is they communicate in the way that fits the moment. Too often, all of us are busy, and so it's easier. It used to be easier to just send an email as opposed to pick up the phone. Well, now it's even worse, because now we send a text, which is even less words. When people get busy, if it's not a text or an email, it's a memo that comes from the boss. Written communication is one of the worst communications that can possibly exist for sharing important information that requires tone. Because The written word does not remotely clarify tone and body language and pauses and things like that. What it does is create confusion, because if you're having a bad day, you have a tendency to say things in your head a little terse. Well, that's not how they meant it. They just were busy, so they only said it in 5 words. How many times have you received a text or an email when you thought, well, that was rude, or I've got to give them a call and talk to them about this? And then you talk to them and find out that, oh, I am so sorry. That's not what I meant. I meant XYZ. And you believe them because you can hear their tone, you can see their body language, you hear their pauses. So, knowing the medium that you should use to communicate for each situation is very important. The final way that leaders communicate is with calm and steadiness and consistency. And most importantly, like a human. Right now, AI, as Dee Dee in particular knows, is taking over everything. It's easier for people to write emails and memos. It's easier for them to write speeches. It's easier for them to organize their points for a meeting. And sometimes when you do that and you practice it or you send it out, you sound very robotic and very fake. That is not what people need to hear right now. They need to hear honesty and humanity. Because when you do, you build more stability than if you are communicating robotically. AI is a wonderful tool, but AI cannot replace leadership judgment. It can't replace trust. It doesn't replace courage. It doesn't replace the human ability to reduce fear and create clarity and help people to move forward together. That's what humans do. But they have to be smart humans in what they're doing. And smart humans know how to communicate. Now, with that said, there are a lot of smart humans with a high IQ that have no clue how to communicate. And that is where some people who have been promoted because of their degree or because they happen to know more about a product gets promoted and then doesn't know how to communicate. When I had people to hire, I look at their ability to be trained. I look at their ability to fit into my team. I'm not going to hire the person who necessarily has the best credentials if I don't think that they're teachable or they're going to fit into the team. If they don't have the communication skills to be a team player. So it is important that leadership communication is consistent and stable and calm. Hello, beautiful Misha. Because it really, communications is not a support skill anymore. It is a business skill. It's a leadership skill. It's a core leadership skill. That's why it's important to lead with the point right away, to lead with decisions. Don't leave it out there really vague. You tell them what you're going to accomplish today. You tell them what your recommendation is and why. You show structure, like Dee Dee was saying. Structure is consistency, and that's hugely beneficial. You slow your pace to make sure that everyone is keeping up with you. and you tell the truth and you tell it with clarity. You choose the right channel of communication, whether it's, I'm not saying there's never a time for an email, a text, or a memo, but I'm saying that there are times when there's definitely not. It is always better, where possible, to speak one-on-one, to speak in a meeting, or to speak on a Zoom chat, because we can clarify things better together face to face. It's important to have the right feedback when you're doing that and to stay consistent under pressure. Now, this matters because trust is fragile right now. People are skeptical. People are maxed out. There is so much noise out there and so much expectation and so much chaos that they need something stable in their life. And good leadership communication can give them that. It can give them stability in one small corner of their world. It can give them just a little bit of relief in areas that they don't feel terribly confident about. But a good leader can help them overcome that. Let me make sure I've got everything here. Yes. So the important thing is that to be a good leader, you need to have good communication skills. That does not mean that you need to pretend to be somebody else, because people see through that. It doesn't mean you need a different personality. It just means you might need to work on your communication a little bit. But first and foremost, you need to be honest and you need to communicate to people all the time. Does anyone have any questions? No? Well, I think that just one statement in summary, and then I think we're going to wrap up a little early today. And that is that leadership communication is intentional. A good leader does not communicate by the seat of their pants, just like Dee Dee was saying. They have structure in their communication. They have structure in the way they handle things. And when they do that, it allows their workers, their family, their board members, the other people on their team to feel safer and more willing to participate and engage and take ownership. So that is how you speak like a leader. And I'm done. I am so glad that you are here today. It really means.
Well, I'm glad we are too. One, that's the first time I've heard you be able to go through your whole thing. Normally we interrupt you.
That's okay. I always plan times for people to communicate, but you both were shy today and didn't talk.
Actually, no, I was in 100% agreement. I went to a leaders meeting for AI that I was invited to by a woman who is supposed to be extremely big in AI leadership right now.
Mm-hmm.
And AI directions. She did everything you said not to do. She knew her stuff, that she made it through, but it was the best example of bad communication I have ever seen. Mm-hmm. And she was very smart, but I just watched that and I said, Karen. Karen. Oh. And she was concise. At least she was concise. But her concise statements weren't well structured. It was like she didn't think about the structure beforehand, and you can tell she didn't do anything prior to what she wanted to speak on. And somehow Vicky's good at flying at the seat of her pants and still staying consistent because she said it enough. but this woman was not.
I'm so sorry to hear that because that makes for a
At 5 o'clock in the morning, yes, I was so sorry to hear that myself. I just sat there and went,
I'm sorry to hear that.
luckily, most of us had because it was 5 in the morning for me, most of us had our cameras off. So she didn't get to see me.
Very good. Oh, ladies, I'm so glad you're here. And for those of you listening to the replay, thank you. I hope that this information is helpful to you. Oh,
And it's
sorry.
nice seeing you, Nisha. I missed everything you said. Darn it.
It's
Oh,
nice seeing y'all too. And I just wanted to share that I am currently getting ready to step into leadership. So this is very helpful because I am nervous about being in the position, but I do know that I'm capable, and
yes.
using the structure and what you provide will help me communicate better when I'm working with the group. So thank you.
At least now you'll have a group to practice on.
Right.
Um, I,
Excellent.
I would like to say one thing before I disappear and go do some real work. Um, I would really like to um, hear some things structure, on structuring, on structuring a talk. What do people find most important? The results or the beginning of something? Some people need to hear it backwards. People need to know the reasons behind something before they can understand the process. So I really am kind of now very focusing on structures for myself and my company. I realize I'm running on the seat of my pants here too, doing all my business stuff. And I've got to get some structure. And I don't seem to figure out how to get it all. I know of the result I want. I know, or I have an idea. I know what I want to start on, my direction, but I don't have a result, and it's blah, 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 blah. So it would be nice to have some structure there if we can at some point.
Well, we can certainly talk about that at a lifeboat meeting or a coffee meeting, or from a communication standpoint, I'll put something together in an article and
I would love it.
master's class. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
ladies. I'm so
Take
glad.
care, Karen, it's so nice to see you. I missed you yesterday.
Yes, I'm afraid I'm going to turn off the recording here for a second.